the Danbury Police Department, who was suspended for 5 days without pay for calling me a homophobic slur. We also have the full internal affairs report in front of us, and we will be going over that together. Let's get into it. Let me just bring you guys in here. All right, guys. So I am joined by Detective Sergeant Banic and Chief Scott, retired. How are you guys doing today?
Hey, Sean, how are you?
Doing great,
Okay,
Sean.
Scott.
Thanks for having us back.
I love having you guys here. Love hearing your insight. Very educational. So I appreciate you guys being here, and I know everybody that watches appreciates it as well. Before we get into it, I'm just going to remind everybody, in case you forgot, the full video of Sergeant Vito Iacobellis coaching Phil and saying what he said against me, to me, is in the description below if you want to watch that. I highly recommend you do. But we'll watch a little clip here together. Let's take a look.
So I would start this by saying, I am a security guard for Allied Universal Security Services, and I work at Danbury City Hall, 155 Deer Hill Ave, Danbury, Connecticut. Right? You introduce yourself and what happened. You don't have to go into crazy detail of the past with this guy, this and that. Whatever's pertinent. This is just what's pertinent to the case. A man who I know from prior experience as whatever you know him as, right? Came into the facility, was video recording. He wanted to go upstairs. I tried to stop him. He got in my face. He tried to move past me, and I believed I was doing the right thing by physically stopping him from going up the stairs at City Hall, going further into the building. You follow my drift? This is your letter to the court, so make it good. Okay? You need to say why you decided to put your hands on him. That's the most important part. You need to say why you decided to put your hands on him. And it needs to be pretty good. Proceeded to head upstairs. Since he was violating what I believe to be rules, I'm supposed to come, like. I stood in front of the stairwell and only touched him when he decided to go past me. As he tried to push past me, I stepped in front of him or put my arm out so that he did not proceed up the stairs. I was not trying to hurt him. I was just trying to stop him from going up the stairs, if that's true. You follow my drift? You have to do this. I can't do this.
He called me a homophobic slur and deleted it from his body camera footage.
All right, guys. So that's the clip I want to show you. It's just a 2-minute clip. Again, full video is in the description below. Seems like that's coaching to me, coaching a suspect. At the time, he was a suspect. I was pressing charges against Phil Janusa, the security guard. Seemed pretty unbiased to me, or biased, excuse me. He's very biased in that scenario. And, it clearly called me. This guy is such a FAG. Can't really put it on YouTube, but he did say that, and the audio was missing from one of the body camera footages that was provided to my attorney during discovery, which to me is bigger than the word, right? I'm a big believer in free speech, not hate speech, which that clearly is, but even more concerning is the missing audio from the body camera footage that was provided to my lawyer during discovery. Seems quite unfair to me having, a fair and just trial. So I want to go over excuse me. I'll make it bigger so everybody can see it together. So I received this. I want to make this clear. I received this just yesterday from the Danbury Police Department. I had to receive this from doing a FOIA request. So let me be clear here. The chief, Patrick Ridnour, did not in any way provide this willingly. In fact, I had to threaten multiple times to go to the FOIA commission to have them compelled to produce these documents to me. And finally, after many, many emails, I received the following internal affairs report. So this is apparently a letter to me from the police chief. I'm going to stop and give my thoughts throughout. this entire report, and if Chief Scott or Detective Banic has anything to say, they can, interject. So this says, Dear Mr. Reyes, the Internal Affairs Division has completed the investigation of your complaint against the Danbury Police Sergeant Vito Iacobellis. The dispositions are as follows. The allegation that then Officer Iacobellis referred to you as an FAG as he passed you in his patrol car on July 15, 2021 is sustained. Although he was talking to himself. You see, guys, this is the excuses already. Instead of full accountability, the chief is making excuses. Although he was talking to himself alone in his cruiser, there is a clear evidence to show that the then Officer Iacobellis said that what you have alleged. Now, Sergeant Iacobellis has acknowledged his mistake and apologized. Apologized to the community, the public at large, me, because I didn't get an apology. But we'll move on. Upon reflection, he understands that he should not have used that terminology to characterize this matter or in any instance. However, there is no evidence to suggest that then Officer Iacobellis' handling of this matter was motivated by bias of any kind, as the camera footage clearly shows that his interaction with you throughout the day was pleasant and professional at all times. So basically what you're saying is that he's two-faced. You're acknowledging that your then Officer Iacobellis was two-faced. Behind my back, he'll say one thing about me and then smile to my face. Nonetheless, use of such language is unacceptable under any circumstance and has been addressed with Sergeant Iacobellis through our disciplinary process. All other allegations in your complaint have been classified as not sustained, as there is insufficient evidence to either support or refute those allegations. Except where mandated by law, every officer has a certain amount of discretion on whether or not to make an arrest based on the information that is provided to him or her. There is insufficient evidence to suggest that then Officer Iacobellis' judgment was clouded by any personal friendship with the guard, as you have alleged. Again, the officer's lengthy interaction with you was cordial and professional at times, evidenced in part by the fact that you complimented him several times regarding his demeanor. With regard to the video, it appears that the muted but not missing. So let me make this clear. Chief Patrick Ridenour is saying that the audio was muted, not missing. I don't know what the difference is, but not missing. Few seconds of the video was inadvertent. Now, Sergeant Iacobellis had nothing to do with this, as you have alleged. So who did have anything to do with the missing audio, or muted, whatever you want to use? Thank you for bringing your concerns to our attention. Sincerely, Patrick Ridenour, Chief of Police. So this is a letter that was supposedly sent and written to me on April 23rd. It never was. Like I said, I had to get through this through the FOIA request and many threats of going to the FOIA commission to compel them. This is the investigation disposition here. Not sustained for one of the allegations. Again, didn't mention anything about, coaching, or that's what was one of my complaints, that he was coaching and influencing him in his writing his statement, which we all saw, right? This is why they didn't want this going before a jury. Let's be real, because they didn't want a jury seeing that video. It's pretty horrible and pretty damning. And what happened to the body camera audio? Just, we're going to leave it as Sergeant Iacobellis had nothing to do with it, and that's okay. Seems pretty irresponsible that police chief would just, hey, it went missing, and it wasn't Sergeant Iacobellis. We're all good with that. And then my other allegation was sustained, him calling me the homophobic slur, which obviously would be sustained because it was on video. This is a letter to Sergeant Iacobellis. Please be advised that Internal Affairs has completed its investigation of the complaint made against you by Sean Paul Reyes. Based on the report, you are charged with the following: General Order 1075, Category C, Line 1, use of racial or other discriminatory language toward members of the department or the public. And then he was scheduled for a disciplinary hearing. So this is the Internal Affairs from Detective Lieutenant Mabel. Internal Affairs report here. On February 6, 2023, Mr. Sean Paul Reyes submitted a letter addressed to Chief Ridenour and myself. The letter requested an Internal Affairs investigation of Sergeant Vito Iacobellis for the following reasons. On July 15, 2021, as then Officer Iacobellis arrived at the Danbury City Hall, as he passes Reyes in his patrol car, he can be seen gesturing towards Reyes and saying, "This guy is such an FAG. How can the citizens of Danbury trust that Iacobellis can protect and serve with such hateful and homophobic views?" Number 2, Iacobellis was seen on body-worn camera coaching a suspect on how to write a statement. Number 3, Officer Iacobellis never applied for an arrest warrant against the suspect, Phil Janusa, which he said he was going to do. 4, 50 seconds of audio was redacted that includes Officer Iacobellis calling Reyes an FAG. So what is it missing? Is it muted, redacted? I don't know who redacted it. Maybe we'll find out here. Action taken on 2/6. I began reviewing worn camera footage of the incident that Reyes complains about. I reviewed Sergeant Iacobellis' body-worn camera at 45 seconds. Sean Paul Reyes can be seen outside of Iacobellis' vehicle. 1 second later, Iacobellis is saying, "This guy is such an FAG." Iacobellis said this when inside driving his cruiser. It appeared to be an utterance to himself. I reviewed the remaining body-worn camera footage of the incident. Also, I later notified Chief Ridenour of the complaint, who later told me to handle the investigation. On February 7th, I reviewed the body-worn camera policy on redaction. Per that order, video is redacted per state and federal law. There are 2 copies of Iacobellis' body-worn camera from that incident, one by Iacobellis and one by Iacobellis redacted by Detective Sergeant Favich. So I don't know why Detective Sergeant Favich would redact him calling me an FAG. It doesn't seem like that would be part of the policy or their policy on redactions here that are in accordance with state and federal law. I don't understand, because the chief didn't even say that somebody redacted it in his letter to me. I also reviewed the report from July 15th, 2021 incident. The investigation concluded that the security officer Janusa was used reasonable force against Reyes and was not charged. Of course they said he used reasonable force. You could put your hands on everybody, but I'm charged with multiple crimes in Danbury and had to go to a 2-week-long infraction trial. Sergeant Iacobellis was seen on body-worn camera assisting both Janusa and Reyes in giving their statements. It is common police practice for police officers to assist people, including suspects, witnesses, victims, with writing statements. But I wouldn't think it would be normal for them to say what to write exactly. Catch my drift, don't worry about it. I'll fill in the blanks. Those are his words, not mine.
Hey, Sean, I'm
Yeah.
going to jump in just on that
Sure.
statement real quick.
Go ahead.
So I would argue that is not a best practice for law enforcement. There's a difference on assisting a victim or somebody that's doing a statement and just helping them understand what it is that needs to be accomplished. But it's not the place of the officer, because that is the person's sworn statement. So as I'm listening to Iacobellis in the video clip that you showed, I mean, Iacobellis might as well have just written the report or written the statement by himself, if that's what he wanted Phil to do. And then his comment, you've got to make this good for the court. What is he really trying to say in the undertones there? And I question the intentions. Is it a means that, hey, we're going to get this guy? It's pretty apparent to me based on his little subtle comments and by his statement that may be his intent. And in my professional opinion, and again, it's my professional opinion, it was totally inappropriate what he was saying and what he was doing with the security officer, Janusa. And I just had to make that statement. It just really burns me watching that part of the video, because that is not how officers act. I can tell you, when I had victims and I'm helping them through a statement, I'm not telling them what to say. If I have specific questions that I want identified in the statement, I'll take their statement back. I will write out my question and allow them to answer it in their own words. I will never stand there and say, well, hey, you need to say this, 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 and this, and make sure you really get this in here, because you got to make this look really good for the court. I question the motive and the behavior behind that whole issue.
Well, yeah, no. And Chief Scott, coming from you, 30 years of law enforcement experience, a retired police chief, that's very telling. But I think anyone without any type of law enforcement experience, just watching that video, if you just gave it to any single person and you watched it, you'd be like, there's something not right going on here. This does not seem like this is normal, police procedure to say, I'll fill in the blanks, make it look good. You're catching my drift, just didn't sit right with me at all the first time I ever watched it. And for the 600,000 plus people that watched it already, it didn't sit well with them either, if you could tell by the comment section.
Yeah, the other statement that was up there just a minute ago that the lieutenant put in this report, he's even acknowledging, this is my professional opinion, he's acknowledging that a crime did take place. So why is he not holding Janusa equally accountable?
Yeah.
Why is it just so one-sided here?
Well, we
that's
know
not
that.
justice.
We
That's
know.
not
circling the
fairness.
wagon.
What'd you say, Mike? What'd you say, Sergeant Banic?
It's called circling the wagons. So
Circling the
obviously there
wagons.
was biased against you, right? So they're
From the
they're
start.
trying to circle the wagons.
Yeah, from the start. Of course, they were trying to protect
you
Phil.
got that kind of coaching. Did you get that? Did you receive that kind of coaching? in your
No, I did
statement?
not receive that to make it good, or he was doing the actual opposite. He was like, Phil's a really good guy. I've known him from the hospital. He used to work at the hospital. Maybe he had a bad day. He was things of that nature. Again, I don't, we all know what was going on here is big, against Jean-Paul Reyes. They were, the whole city weaponized against me, from this private security company, City Hall, police department, and they want the state's attorney's office, and I believe all the way up to the judge that presided over my case, that they wanted to try and get me on something. And, again, any other officer in any other town probably would have written that warrant like they said. And, but again, Sergeant Iacobellis didn't, unfortunately. He wrote a warrant for my arrest. And then he goes on to say here, after I had submitted a formal notice to Iacobellis, I sent him a request for a written statement on 2/10. That per Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary, FAG is listed as an offensive word and as a verb, a gay person used as a term of abuse and disparagement. There are two other uses, verb, noun, for a young public schoolmate in England. Well, we do not live in England. On February 17th, Sergeant Iacobellis submitting the following statement. And I want everybody to really hear the statement by Sergeant Iacobellis here. Regarding my conduct during the above-mentioned incident and after my review of the body-worn camera footage, I am penitent of my word choice. It was never my intention to offend anyone, and I would never use that term directly against a member of the public. Only behind their back, right? And that's my words, but only behind their back. I wouldn't do it directly to them, but, he leaves the door open to only behind their back. I have never, nor would I ever use that word as a slur. To my generation and growing up, that word was used to describe someone as being obnoxious or a nuisance. So exercising your constitutional rights is obnoxious and being a nuisance, and being polite and cordial. And apparently, to a sworn law enforcement officer, took an oath to uphold our rights in the Constitution of the United States. I have reached out to the department psychologist, Dr. Keene, and will be working with him in an effort to better understand the impact of my words to avoid usage of harsh language. I can assure you that through conscious effort, with the assistance of counsel, I can correct my actions to ensure that this conduct does not take place in the future. Well, I will say one thing about that. That statement seems disingenuous, that he wouldn't apologize to me, Jean-Paul Reyes, to the person that he said the word about, and he wouldn't apologize to the community of Danbury and to we the people as a whole throughout the United States. It's just shocking to me that he wouldn't do that. Findings: based on said facts and circumstances, Sergeant Iacobellis committed a violation of GO 1075C1, use of racial or other discriminatory language towards members of the department or public. This complaint should be ruled as sustained. There were no other violations by department policy in other complaints, items 2, 3, and 4 listed. Respectfully submitted, Detective Lieutenant Ethan Maple.
Hey, Sean, I'm going to jump in real quick.
Go ahead, Chief.
If you go back up to Iacobellis' statement, there's something that was disturbing me when I first read this, and I'm looking at the parallel of something else that happened that came on tape about you and against you that led an officer to take a chicken way out and retire. And we all know what that statement was, that he was going to, 20 years ago would have kicked your teeth out, and, years before that, you would have gotten killed. Do you start to see a pattern of behavior that's going on here. At least I do, of some pattern and practice within the agency. And I'm not pointing a finger at every officer on that department. But if I were a police chief, I would really start to ask some questions about what's going on in my department. Why are these kind of commentaries taking place behind the backs of people that they're dealing with in the public? And if these things are going on, we need to stop that kind of culture and pattern and practice within the agency, because those things obviously have now come to public light, but it leads you to question what else is going on behind closed doors. What else is going on body worn camera that people are not seeing? And what else is happening on body worn camera that supervisors, are they catching this? Are they watching the officers' body cameras on a regular basis and correcting these kind of pattern behaviors and comments that are being made? So again, these things, if they're left to go out of control, can tarnish an agency and ruin its image and really cause a lot of distrust with the community. So again, if I were this chief, and my advice to him, I hope he sees this commentary that we're doing tonight. Chief, you need to go back to your department and you really need to start looking at your culture and start identifying those areas of behavior that's obviously coming up as a pattern and a practice, in my professional opinion. Because if you don't, God only knows what else is going to happen, and God only knows what else has happened to other innocent citizens and the comments that were made that are unprofessional. So that, I just wanted to interject there for just a moment. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. And I think that's a great point that you made, that now you're referring to Officer Utter of formerly of the Danbury Police Department, who has retired, who faced a 9-day suspension for saying that 20 years ago he would have killed me and removed my teeth. That's definitely a good point. And it's all happening on body camera footage behind the people's backs. And, this is definitely a pattern that's going on. And you think that as the chief of police, Patrick Ridnour, you think as he's seeing this pattern, he would hold his officers more accountable? Because again, this happened while Sergeant Iacobellis was still an officer. He was promoted after all of these, misconducts, because it was more than just the slur. To me, it was the coaching, it's everything, how he handled the whole incident. But you'd think at the very least he would have been demoted to show a strong message. Hey, listen, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. It doesn't matter if it's Sean Paul Reyes. But it feels to me, Chief, that and Detective Banic, that because it's Sean Paul Reyes, because it's happening to me, apparently Danbury Police Department's public enemy number one, that they get some sort of a pass. Because if it happened to someone else, I'm sure that they would take it a lot more seriously. And again, just the Chief's, very, I would say, cookie cutter letter that he sent me, and everything else, that he's not even apologizing on the behalf of his department, because the buck stops with him. As a former chief, that, and the buck stops with him, and there is no apology to the people and to myself for Sergeant Iacobellis' actions. It just doesn't seem right to me at all.
Hey, Sean, the other thing that speaks to the culture of any agency, but I want to address this one specifically. You and I had a conversation, actually, Detective Banic was part of this conversation as well, that we learned from you that Iacobellis had a conversation with you, and he was not a sergeant yet, but he was up for promotion. And if I articulate this correctly, based on what you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he was concerned because he was in the mix of this whole situation and thing going on, that he was fearful of his promotion. Well, let's look outside the box for just a second. Why was he concerned? Is it because in the culture that they have, that if he stood up and did the right thing, that he's not going to get promoted? So what's going on within the culture that puts such a fear in him to make that kind of comment with you? hey, I don't want to go through any of this. Let's just try to find an easy way out of this. I'm just narrowing this down in words, but you can articulate it better to everybody here tonight. But again, that goes back to speaking about the culture. That obviously there's some things going on that if he feels that, stepping up and making the right decisions for for everybody involved is going to prevent him from getting promoted, then what in the heck is going on within the agency? But again, it's not isolated to just them. I know from years of experience in dealing with hundreds of agencies that there are agencies out there that the culture is it's a good old boys club. And if you don't go with our flow and you don't protect our wrongs and hide the sins that we do, we're going to make sure you don't get promoted because we don't want you to expose our bad behavior. So that's a culture problem. That's a huge culture issue. So I just thought it was kind of ironic as we see this pattern taking place. That was just yet another mark of issues within the department that I personally and professionally feel they really need to look at and start to address.
That accountability starts at the top. Sorry.
Go ahead, Mike.
That accountability starts at the top. And I would think that the chief would have, would hold more accountability because it's you, because of your platform and all the support that you're getting. And it's concerning that, now Sergeant, he's going to be a leader and people are going to be learning from him.
Yeah, which is really unfortunate, honestly. And, you make the point, Chief, about culture, and I completely agree. It's not isolated to just Danbury, but I agree. I've traveled the country myself, and I've dealt with many law enforcement agencies and dealt with many supervisors and regular officers. And it does seem, and I've spoken to many officers, that does seem like the culture is, hey, you better cover for us. And that's so horrible that to be a law enforcement officer, to take an oath to uphold the United States Constitution, to uphold our rights, to, your whole job is to hold people accountable for their actions and to protect and serve the people. And when law enforcement officers aren't held accountable, and this is my big thing about law enforcement, Chief, you make a great point about, education and ego. I love that. I love to harp on accountability. There is no accountability in law enforcement. There is no accountability. 5 days suspension without pay doesn't seem like it's adequate enough, especially if you're trying to change the culture, like you said, right? If you're trying to, only way you could change the culture is by making a big impact and saying, hey, we're not going to tolerate this. This is unacceptable. Why not reach out to me and we can use my platform together, just as you guys have reached out to me. We can work together and try and bridge the gap. That's the goal here. And I think the pride and the egos of Danbury, the city of Danbury, won't allow them to do that. And, in my opinion, I don't think the police officers in Danbury are really, like you said, Sergeant Banic. Now he's a sergeant who will be teaching other people. And do you not think that all officers in Danbury know that he said this and know that this happened? And, he still got promoted. He got promoted, in my opinion, because of these actions he took against me, for not writing the warrant for Phil's arrest, for writing one against me, for, going a completely opposite of what he said. So I think that's why he got promoted. And you're right. He did say, hey, could we just let this go? I took my sergeant test. I passed the test. I'm up for sergeant. That's really telling that he would say that, because now you're right. It's the culture. It's like, oh, if I arrest Phil and I do the right thing and do my job, which I told him, you're just doing your job. Why would you get in trouble? I could possibly feel some hot water about it, which is not cool. So this page is basically just his. Go ahead, Sergeant Banic. Go ahead.
All right. And we're all human. So, we all have emotions. We all get caught up and we can make a mistake, but we need to get ahead of it. Like you said, if he'd reach out and apologize, that could have been cut off a long time ago, but now it's left to fester. That, it appears possibly that someone tried to cover it up and hide it, but it got out in court because I think they played the wrong video in court. They're supposed to play the redacted one, but played the wrong, the unredacted one. And then now it's out. So if they just would have got ahead of it, say this happened, we're sorry, that would have been a lot better outcome. It's not great. It's better that it didn't happen, but it happened. Get ahead of it.
Yeah, I agree. You should have got ahead. They should have gotten ahead of it. And, to that point, did a sergeant review this before, especially as such a, you know, I would say high profile, there's a lot of public interest around around this case. There was, and the state's attorney, did they not review this body camera footage? Where's their accountability to say, hey, to point out, hey, Sergeant Iacobellis said X, Y, and Z about defendant Jean Paul Reyes. That's not acceptable. Where's their accountability? How many people watched this body camera footage and didn't do anything about it to correct Sergeant Iacobellis or try to hide it? Apparently, because that's the version that my attorney got for sure was redacted, apparently, or missing audio. I don't know what would be the point of redacting someone saying that, other than it sounds like a cover up to me. But anyway, this page is just his statement again, that he sent over with his signature and his badge number. And then this is the suspension from duty notice from the police chief. Sergeant Iacobellis, pursuant to your disciplinary hearing, you are suspended from duty without pay for 5 working days for the following departmental violations: General Order 1075, Category C, Line 1, use of racial or other discriminatory language toward members of the public or the department. I have taken into consideration the following mitigating factors. So these are mitigating factors according to Police Chief Patrick Ridnour. 1, you were alone in your cruiser at the time. You referred to the complainant as an FAG. 2, you were polite and professional at all times during your interaction with the complainant, showed no signs of bias, and handled the incident appropriately. 3, the complainant complimented you several times during your interaction. 4, you have already completed remedial training in implicit bias at my direction. I also accept your explanation that you did not intend to use the word in a discriminatory manner. However, you must be mindful of the historical context that certain words have. In this instance, you used a word that you knew or should have known to be a slur to describe your frustrations in dealing with the complainant. What frustrations? He didn't even speak to me at that point. I've never met Sergeant Iacobellis, then Officer Iacobellis, in my life. So what frustrations could he have possibly had? Again, this really irates me that the police chief is making these excuses. Again, where's the accountability? Just own it. You're making excuses. What frustrations could he have had with me? He never met me or talked to me before in his life. Although you were not speaking. And then frustrations, you just said yourself that the conversation was very cordial. Although you were not speaking directly to him or anyone else, your use of such language while in uniform and on duty caused embarrassment to yourself, our department, and could hamper our efforts to build and maintain positive relationships within our community. Use of this terminology is never acceptable under any circumstances and will not be tolerated, especially while on duty. Finally, if you experience any problems that are affecting your ability to effectively perform your duties, please do not hesitate to contact our psychologist, Dr. Keene, or any member of the peer support, the city's employee assistance program, or any qualified professional for assistance. Thank you for your cooperation in this matter. Please contact me or your union representative if you have any questions. Sincerely, Patrick Ridnour, Chief of Police. Wow. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's the full internal affairs report. While I have you for a second, hit the like button, share, let me know your thoughts below. Sergeant Banic, do you have any final thoughts on this whole thing, on the letter that the police chief just wrote?
The public expects, the police departments to vet and hire the correct people. They expect us to train them properly and hold them accountable. They want accountability. And I know I've said this before, but it's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. So apparently, they're tolerating a lot there that it's getting like this.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. It is really irritating hearing, just reading back what the police chief, told Sergeant Iacobellis, how he's just excusing him. And, it's just infuriating. Where's like you said, where's the accountability? Chief Scott?
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's kind of interesting, and maybe this is a good warning, if you will, or a learning opportunity or a lesson for agencies that are going to see this tonight. If you're a supervisor, start reviewing your officers' body-worn cameras. Take a proactive approach. I just got contacted yesterday by an agency concerning, some disciplinary issues, and their thoughts about what it's going to, what's the perception going to be, because basically they had an officer for the last 2 years that's refused to go on calls and back up other officers. And, all these things have been recorded. And then you've got body worn camera. And then I've got another department, Sunrise, Florida, sergeant police case down there where he was choking out that female that was trying to prevent him from getting in tons of trouble. But again, I guarantee that's not the first time that sergeant's gone off the reservation. So who's looking at his body cameras? But then he instructed the officers on the scene to turn the body cameras off. So, you've got this whole issue of accountability. Body worn cameras are great. I'm a big advocate of them, but the supervision needs to go back and supervise and look at the warning signs. And again, here in this case, reading through, this internal affairs report, it reeks issues of culture. And again, a police chief, if they're serious in their job, and again, it's my professional opinion when I say this, he as the police chief really needs to look deep into his culture and see what the heck is actually going on. But do they really know what's going on? So there's a chance that they could bring this back around, get this corrected. And, Sergeant Banic brought up a good point. What would you have felt, Sean, if Iacobellis would have reached out to you personally and said, you know what, Sean, what I said was wrong. I ask for your forgiveness. I apologize. I should have never done that. I think in my view, that would go a lot farther than you're having to make demands just to get the letter that was mailed to you, which I think in and of itself is totally unacceptable as well. They should have reached out to you without you having to ever file anything, for the sake or fact that you filed a complaint. There needs to be a follow-up, and you just do that as a common courtesy. Anytime we had a complaint filed against the agency or the department, I always reached out, made contact. And if we were wrong, we admitted it. Here's how we're going to fix it. And if the officer owes that person an apology, that's just being a human. As Sergeant Banic brought it up, look, we all have bad days. Now, it's no excuse for bad behavior, but if it does happen, fess up, fix it, and let's keep moving on.
To your point, Chief, if you look at really quickly, if you look at the date of this memorandum here, it's March 17th. I just received all these documents yesterday, May 1st. This has been over and done with already, and you think they would have reached out to the complainant, but no, I had to threaten to go to the FOIA commission and file a formal FOIA request, and eventually they did provide it to me, and now I will be doing the job of the supervisor. Like you said, the supervisor should be reviewing body camera footage. I am now in the process of requesting body camera footage at 3-month intervals to review to see if there's anything else, any other misconduct and bring it to the forefront. Use this platform to bring it to the forefront.
Well, and just for people that are listening in or are going to hear this later, I know probably some comments are probably going to get put in. Well, why wasn't this officer fired? Well, it depends on the agreement with their Labor Lodge 028, the Fraternal Order of Police. It's all based on what that written agreement is between the union and the city. It's a contract, right? And the city is obligated to follow that contract. Now, it may not be popular, but there is it's called progressive discipline. So depending upon the severity of, the incident that took place will depend upon the level of, discipline that's going to take place. Well, here he got 5 days off. So that's probably a mid-level disciplinary level, I would imagine. Most contracts are usually about the same, but we have to realize that we have to honor those contracts because those are agreements between the city and the unions. And those officers have the right to be represented. They have the right to have a union, and there's a process that has to be followed. So, again,
well, that's definitely another topic that we can do a whole segment on police unions, because I would disagree. I don't think anyone in public service should have a union, but again, we can have that debate and have that conversation on another segment. I think that'd be great to talk about police unions.
Sounds good.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank
we're
you,
going to be getting
Sean.
out of here. I
Thanks,
just want to
everybody.
answer some super chats. Thanks, Sergeant Banic, Chief.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys. All right, guys. So before I get out of here, let me see the super chats. I saw a super chat earlier that asked why wasn't Phil at the trial. Phil was on the run, I guess. I don't know. He was originally supposed to show up, and then he decided not to show up for the trial. I don't understand why he wasn't there either. I have another chat from AMG Rocket, super chat here. Keep up the awesome crusade, Sean. Thank you. I appreciate all the support, all the love you guys send. I see all your emails. You know, I see the comments. I try and like and read as many comments as I possibly can. Go look at any of my videos. I try and like almost every comment. The last video in New Jersey was insane. Stay tuned for Thursday. That one's going to get even crazier because I'm going to be going back there, and I'll definitely show you guys how that goes. But again, I want to thank Detective Sergeant Michael Banic and Chief Scott for their input here. In my final thoughts is 5 days is not enough. I don't think that's true accountability. I would rather him get 0 days and him apologize to me man to man and say, hey, listen, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that to you. I was wrong. You know, an apology, a public apology to the people and myself would have went a long way. I'm sure a lot of you feel that way as well. But I think he should have been demoted and brought back to the status that he was at when he made those comments and not be promoted. And for, you know, doing those that coaching of a suspect and everything else, just not a good look for the Danbury Police Department. They definitely have to do better, in my opinion, and hopefully they do. I will be following up on the story. There will be news articles written. I spoke to a reporter today, so stay tuned for that. I'll share that in my community feed. But let me know what you guys think about this one in the comment section below. As always, stay safe. God bless. I'll see you in the next video. Long Island Audit. Peace.